Hey guys, I am randomly filming in my car today. I have a couple meetings and I wanted to take you guys along with me. One of them is an audit. So I thought you might like to hear about what it's like to go through an audit as a bookkeeper. And obviously I'm not going to be allowed to take you into the meeting with me, but I'll give you some background right now before I go in, and then I'll let you know how it goes afterwards. So first of all, what is an audit? You probably have heard of this before and you generally know. It's basically just checking over all of the bookkeeping and the accounting in a business to make sure everything looks good, there's no mistakes, and there is no fraud as well. Because, you've all heard of situations where maybe an accountant or a bookkeeper is the only one looking at the finances, and then they're able to steal a bunch of money from an organization. So we do not want that. And there are different types of audits. You can think of a million different ways you could check. You could just do a payroll audit. You could do different types, but kind of general buckets are either an internal audit, an external audit, or an IRS audit. So a lot of times we think about an IRS audit oh no, the IRS is coming in to check on everything. But you can also choose to do your own audits that are not associated with the IRS. I'll tell you what experience I've had with the three different kinds. So this is an internal audit. It is for a church, and I actually was a part of the audit previously last year or the year before. And I actually am not working on this business at all, on this nonprofit. There's an accountant who is doing everything, but they just pull in about 8 people to conduct the audit, and they know that I'm a bookkeeper. So you'll find as a bookkeeper, you get sometimes tagged and pulled into some of these types of things. So I'll let you know at the end, my review of this audit, what I think is good about it and is going well, and what things that they don't do as well. So that'll be at the end. But I've also been a part of an external audit, I think it would be considered. And this was for a different nonprofit that I worked for. And every year they would hire an outside company to come in and audit them. And that process was actually a little bit bigger and longer than this church audit that I'm going to. And I believe, I don't actually know this for a fact, but just from my experience, I think that nonprofits are required to have some kind of auditing process. I'm not sure if that's a strict rule or if it's just the board kind of likes an audit every so often, because I've seen audits the most in the nonprofit world. So let me know in the comments if you know more about that and the regulations surrounding it. But when I worked for this other nonprofit, again, there was an accountant that was doing the higher level work. And then every year they would have this external company come in, and they would, I think it took 2 days maybe, and they would spend a couple days and they would ask for all these things to be pulled. So at that other nonprofit, they had a piece of paper documentation for everything. So they would be okay, on March 7th, you guys spent this money. Morgan, pull the piece of paper, the receipt or the deposit slip or whatever that is associated with this expense. And so I think I had to pull 10 different things, and it took me maybe an hour and a half to kind of organize the things that they needed from me for that audit. So that was an external audit, and I have never been part of an IRS audit. Let me know in the comments if you have gone through one. And I don't actually know that much about it. I think that would be kind of interesting to research a bit, because I feel you hear kind of horror stories about IRS audits, and it's a lot of trouble and a lot of time and effort. So let me know if you know anything else about that. All right, and next question is, how often are audits? I kind of touched on this. The audit I'm doing, we do every 2 years, and then at that other nonprofit, they did it every year. And the time spent, I think this will be a couple hours, and it can last up to a week, 2 weeks. I'm not sure, depending on how big the business is, maybe longer. And should you be afraid of an audit? I would say do not be afraid. The person who is conducting the audit is a human, and usually they're trying to help you. They know it can be kind of nerve-wracking or time intensive, but as long as you are honest about everything, even if you don't have your paperwork perfectly in order, do the best you can. Oh yeah, and I remembered, actually, I also go through an audit for the preschool that I am a bookkeeper for. And that one is more on me. That's I have done all the work, I've organized all the paperwork, and that one just feels smaller. It's just a couple people that audit it. And sometimes I do feel nervous if they're where is this thing? And I have to kind of scramble to find it. But usually also the more you do it, the better you feel, right? So if you have a chance to do what I'm doing right now, where you can kind of be a little bit of an observer of an audit, but it's not all on your shoulders, that is a great way to get your feet wet as well. All right, so it is about time for me to go in and do this meeting, this audit. I will circle back with you guys afterwards and let you know what I did and the pros and cons of this audit structure. All right, right, guys, audit is complete. Yay, I'm tired and I'm hungry. I want to go get some food. But I thought I would first let you know how everything went while it's fresh in my mind. So first of all, what did it look like? We were in a room with a big conference table. There were 8 of us, I believe, maybe 9. And the accountant was there, as well as some people on, there's like a finance committee, some people on the finance committee, which does not include me. And there was like kind of my friend acquaintance who is an accountant by profession, but just not for this church. And so I sat next to her. And when I first got there, there was this guy working with the accountant, and he did a different job than the rest of us. I think he was going through all the reconciliation reports and checking that everything balanced. So that was one pretty important job. And then the rest of us did what I did. So when I walked in, there was like a few snacks on the table, and then everyone had a stack of papers in front of them that were clipped together. And so here is what was contained in that stack. So it was 1 month, and first of all, it had the bank statement, and there was 2 accounts. There was a checking and a savings. So it's 2 bank statements, 1 checking, 1 savings. The checking has a lot more going on. The savings was fairly minimal. Okay, then it had a stapled sheet of paper with all the transactions for that month. That is in QuickBooks. And then it also had a reconciliation report. We were told to work mostly with that list, just the first list. And then the reconciliation report was kind of like a bonus if we had a specific question. There was also all the receipts. So they pretty much save paper copies of most all receipts. And then there was deposit slips. So there was like a spreadsheet depending on different deposits, and also this little like cover sheet that told, what was composed of the deposit. And there was check reimbursement requests. So in this church, different people are spending money on things, but they don't all have access to the debit card. And so there's a fair amount of reimbursement requests as different people do different jobs and then get reimbursed. And by jobs, I mean tasks, more like, maybe someone will get like a load of bark dust for the church, and someone will get like a set of books or something. This is like a medium to small business. I'm not sure what their annual revenues, I can't remember. It's under $500,000. Maybe it's like 3 to 400,000 a year. So it's not a huge business, but also not a tiny business. I don't know if that's considered mid-sized, but it's enough transactions per month, a couple hundred transactions per month, and then maybe like 15 deposits per month. So, there's stuff to check. All right, and so what my task was, and the other like 5 or so people doing the same task as me, was I would take that 1 month, that stack of papers, and I would open the bank statement, and I would open the QuickBooks, what was in QuickBooks, like the printout of that. And I would go through, and literally they wanted me to check every single transaction, make sure all the deposits are matching up with, all the deposits that are in QuickBooks, and same with expenses. So like a tiny bit tedious, but you kind of get in a rhythm. And then, there's a few weird things, like maybe this one type of deposit was always clumped together in QuickBooks, and so you kind of learn like, oh, it's from this vendor, so it's going to be 1 transaction instead of 4. So check all the transactions, check the reimbursement forms, make sure they were filled out correctly, they were signed correctly by the right person, they had the right expense accounts, all that stuff. So check those. They wanted to check those forms. I think that could be a place for error or for fraud, possibly, those reimbursement things. So we checked those. And then we did a spot check of the receipts. So I wasn't required to go through every single receipt and match those. That would be a huge headache in my opinion, but just kind of spot check, make sure the receipts are there and they're generally what they're supposed to be. And each month took maybe like 10 minutes or so, depending on, sometimes there was questions. And if we had a question, we could ask the accountant or kind of the other person that was heading it up, I can't find, or this is off a little bit, why is that? And then the accountant could dig into it, or I have a question about this deposit or something. And so once I was done with my month, my stack, I would sign my initials and put it in the done pile, and then grab another month. And we were doing 2 years. I think I already said that, but we do it every 2 years. And so there was 24 stacks to get through. And this took us, I believe, an hour and a half. So maybe slightly longer than an hour and a half. So a little better than I expected, actually. And actually, when I left, there was a few people still working on a couple things and tying up some loose ends. So I was there for an hour and a half. So here's my review of the audit. What I see as the pros and cons and things they could do differently. All right, so starting out with the pros. First of all, it was very organized. I thought all the paperwork was ready for me. Everything was stapled by month. It was organized. There was tons of receipts in the right places. They really weren't there to mess around. They were there to get things done, which I love. Next thing is I thought there was a high level of knowledge. A lot of the people there are really like smart, capable people. Multiple people had accounting degrees. Some people had been doing it many years, so they kind of knew the systems. So I was really happy about that. I feel like everyone knew what they were doing, and I was more, I had done it once before, but I was on the newer end of the learning section more so. And my last pro is that it was thorough. I think, mostly. I mean, the fact that we were checking every transaction, that feels thorough to me. And that leads me to my con, which I was like, are we checking the right things? Because in my mind, if the QuickBooks is being reconciled, then you should probably just check the total at the end and maybe do like a spot check of all the transactions. I guess it seemed a little unnecessary in my mind to go through every single transaction and check them all off. And I guess I'm not really an expert on how someone would commit fraud, but I think you can be like stealing money and the bank account still reconcile. So I feel like there's some piece missing, like, and maybe other people were checking what it is, but I don't know. Let me know in the comments, what's the most important thing for like checks and balances? I know like you're not supposed to have the same person bringing deposits to the bank as putting them in QuickBooks. Like there's a few things like that. I could research that more actually and do a video on that because I'm kind of interested in that topic. But generally, as I was doing this, I was kind of questioning like, is this the best use of our time and resources? It seemed a little bit redundant in my opinion. Okay, and my other con was just that everything is super paper-based, and that's just not my preference. The people in charge are maybe a generation older than I am. And so I think that compared to how I run my business, you know, there's more paper checks being written, there's more things being printed out, more deposit paper slips. Whereas what my personal style is getting to be more and more is like a document on the computer. So maybe I try to get all my receipts digital and then either they're attached in QuickBooks. I have a video about that if the thumbnail looks like this, if you want to check that out. Or you can also just do like a different folders with the documents you need. Because, you know, he'd have a spreadsheet and then he'd print out the spreadsheet. So obviously it's already on the computer. So you could just make like folders of the different info you need. And, you know, there's pros and cons to each. Maybe on the computer, things are a little less accessible visually to like a group of people. So again, I'm happy to come in and go through their organized system. That's great. I'm not running the thing. And I think there are many ways to do audits. So I'm happy just to be there and to learn a little bit more about audits. So hopefully this was helpful. Let me know in the comments what other videos you'd like to see. And I never said that my name is Morgan. If you made it this far, my name is Morgan. Definitely subscribe to my channel if you watched all the way till the end. I do a new bookkeeper video each week. I think it's getting loud. They're blowing leaves over there. So I'm going to go and get some food, but I will talk to you next week. Bye.